The school district brings you this electronic town hall meeting featuring local attorneys to answer your questions about the law and its processes. The moderator tonight is Russell Peterson.
Good evening. My name is Russell Peterson. We have tonight with us 4 members of the Indian River County Bar that are going to answer questions that we hope you'll call in and give us an opportunity to hear some of the concerns that you have. These lawyers are going to be free tonight, but if you go to their office, you're probably going to need to retain them and pay a fee. But tonight, the Indian River County School Board, the Vero Beach High School, the students we have here in the studio with us, and the Indian River County Bar Association are putting on a program at the beginning of Law Week. Law Week is this week. This is Monday, May 2nd. Throughout the week, we're going to have lawyers out in the mall at a table answering questions. We're going to have lawyers in various schools throughout the county. We're going to have the Indian River County Bar Auxiliary with a coloring contest in the county and a host of other events to highlight what's happening in the law and how the law relates to people. So, as I start out tonight, I'm going to introduce you to each of the 4 attorneys that we have, and I'll start with Norman Green. Mr. Green, can you tell us a little bit about your practice of the law? What area do you handle?
Sure, Russ. I'm with Green and Metcalf. We've been practicing here together. I've had the practice since 1977. I predominantly do divorce, marital, and family law.
Okay. So if somebody calls in with a family law question, you're ready to answer.
I'm ready to
questions.
go.
All right. And Mr. Sullivan, Chuck Sullivan, can you tell us a little bit about your practice?
Good evening, Russ. Yes, my name is Chuck Sullivan, and I'm an attorney here in Vero Beach with Sullivan & Sullivan. And my father started the practice, I think, in 1957, and I've been there since 1980. And I primarily work in personal injury and criminal defense, and my father does divorce.
All right. Well, thank you. So any criminal defense, we always get some calls about criminal defense, driving while intoxicated. We don't get any armed robbery questions, but if you have any of those, we'll answer them. Paul Berg, can you tell us a little bit about your practice?
Yes, Russ. I'm with the firm of Clem, Vosell, and Berg and have been practicing 15 years here in Indian River County. My practice is primarily centered in civil litigation and personal injury work.
Now, on civil litigation, we're talking about what? Primarily not criminal?
We're talking about things that are not criminal, where people generally are suing each other over money or real estate transactions or commercial transactions, those sorts of things.
Right. So in a commercial transaction, one business might sue another?
Or it could be a customer or a consumer suing a business owner, or vice versa. We represent a lot of businesses against consumers in different transactions.
All right. Okay. And Bobby Guttridge, you want to tell us a little bit about your practice?
Sure, thanks, Russ. I guess I'm the young guy here. I've been here for 10 years living in Indian River County. Practice criminal law almost exclusively. In fact, exclusively. That's all I do. That's basically it.
Okay. So the full gamut of criminal law?
Full gamut of criminal law, from criminal mischiefs and DUIs to first-degree murder.
Okay. Well, if somebody calls in about a racketeering, RICO type case, you're going to be able to answer those questions?
There's a little more complicated. Let's take them as they come, but I certainly can answer them on a broad level. That's a broad statute.
All right. And that's what we're doing tonight. We're trying, obviously 4 lawyers are not going to be able to cover the kind of detail that you may have a question on, but what they will do is give you a broad answer and try to be as specific as they can. So if you would call in, we would appreciate handling those calls. Call in, give your question to the person that answers the phone. The number's at the bottom of the screen. And I'll watch the screen that's in front of me, so I'll be able to see your questions once they've been typed and sent over to us here in the studio. Once again, we want to thank the students that are here tonight. Hopefully they got their homework done before they came here, or we're going to let them out early enough to get that homework done. Because they're all students at Vero Beach High School. But I've got a question. And the first question that I have, Mr. Guttridge, is a criminal question, or it's a criminal defense question.
Okay.
All right. with summer coming up, I want to know if I get pulled over for boating under the influence, do I have to take the breathalyzer?
Well, Russ, that's an interesting question. There's similar rules. Now, there's been a lot of legislation recently that has sort of combined the rules of regular DUIs with the rules of boating under the influence, and that they can use your old DUIs and enhance the penalties for boating under the influence, or likewise, they can use the boating under the influence and enhance the DUI penalties. However, one thing that is different is that the penalties for not taking the breathalyzer are different. If you have a DUI and you're in your car, you're subject to a license suspension if you don't take it, if you don't take the breathalyzer. And that suspension can be fairly severe. It's a year, and you can't get any kind of a hardship for 90 days if they find they have probable cause to pull you over. On a boating under the influence, you hate to say that you don't have to take it, because the rule isn't that you don't have to take it, but the penalty is a civil infraction. So you don't have any action taken against your driver's license.
What's a civil infraction? What would
You just have
be?
to pay a fine.
Okay.
I believe the fine is $250. It increases if you have previously refused, but they don't take any kind of action against your driver's license, so it doesn't get suspended. And it's one of the few areas where a boating under the influence is actually different than a driving under the influence. All the jail time and the other penalties, the fines and the probation are basically the same.
So if you have had a driving under the influence, first offense,
Yes.
and you get a boating under the influence, second offense,
Yes.
that becomes a second offense?
It becomes a second offense, and interestingly enough, while they don't take any action for refusing the breathalyzer, except for the civil infraction against your driver's license, the suspension of your driver's license, if you get convicted of the boating under the influence, would be the same as if you got a DUI. So if it's a second DUI and you would be subject to a 5-year suspension, you would still be subject to a 5-year suspension.
And would the 5-year suspension apply to your driver's license?
Exactly, your driver's license.
Okay. So even though you're in a boat
Right.
drinking over the limit.
0.08, which is the limit both on the boating under the influence statute and on the driving under the influence statute.
Okay. And, okay. Well, the next question we have is for Paul
Russ,
Berg. Yes.
While
Mr.
you're on
Sullivan.
that subject,
Yeah.
and you might, I'll ask Bobby, Mr. Guttridge, to maybe add to this too, but people may not know this, but you can also be charged with a crime if you're riding your bicycle under the influence.
Oh, really?
Right. I think Mr. Guttridge has had some of those cases.
Oh yeah, I've had several of those cases, absolutely.
And what do they suspend if you are riding a bicycle?
Well, they just increase the suspension on your driver's license. Usually what you get is somebody who has previously had a DUI, so that's why they're driving the bicycle.
All right.
And in defense of the police officers around here, you've got to be driving pretty poorly. And usually they'll warn you, hey, look, buddy, you should probably get off your bicycle. And then you start running into traffic and becoming a hazard, and then that's when you see people get arrested for it. But they do arrest them. I've handled several of those cases.
You have, all right.
And unfortunately, the people that get arrested for that are usually quite intoxicated.
So they're arguing with a police officer.
They're arguing.
They're not doing handstands as they go down the street on the
They
bicycle?
might not take the breathalyzer, but, you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words in a lot of these DUI cases, and sometimes the picture is not so pretty.
Well, on the picture, what do you mean? They jump out with a camera or video or
Well,
what?
they video, and when you get arrested for a DUI, they typically will videotape you on the scene. Most of the cars in Indian River County, both the sheriff's and the Vero Beach Police Department, as well as almost all of the highway patrols, have in-car cameras. So they tape you right there on the scene before you've had a chance to sort of sober up and get your wits about you. And usually you can get a pretty good idea of if a person's intoxicated at that point. And I say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Most of the time what gets people on these DUIs is really not so much the picture as what they say, as you alluded to.
Okay.
They start arguing, and you know, you can tell from their speech and the things that they say that they're intoxicated. So don't argue with the police officers if you get pulled over for DUI.
Are they allowed to just stand there and not answer the questions?
You know, I mean, be polite. You can stand there and not answer the questions.
Probably be better off in some
If
cases.
you're really drunk, you really are better off doing that.
Okay. All right. Well, Paul Berg, I've got a question for you. My insurance agent assured me that I had full coverage, but my friend who was recently in an auto accident told me I needed coverage. What does that mean? What does mean, and what is coverage?
Russ, coverage is uninsured motorist coverage or underinsured motorist coverage. And it refers to a situation where you're in an automobile accident and the person who hit you either doesn't have any insurance to pay you or doesn't have enough insurance. And this happens quite frequently. Most accidents nowadays result in a trip to the hospital and some follow-up care and treatment, and the cost of the medical bills and the hospital treatment alone can easily run $10,000 or $20,000 in a very short period of time. The minimum requirements in the state of Florida are that each person carries personal injury protection of $10,000 and then $10,000 to pay for damage to the other person's car, but they don't have to pay for or have insurance available to pay for the injury that they caused to the other person. So this uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, commonly called coverage, is something that you should carry, because that way you've bought insurance to protect yourself and pay for medical bills, lost wages, and those sorts of things that are not going to be reimbursed to you if you're hit by somebody who does not have enough insurance.
So if I'm going into the insurance agent to buy insurance, and say I've already been there and I have insurance, and I'm going back and I'm saying, listen, I'm concerned about this I heard about it on All Week on the television program, and the lawyers are saying I should have more coverage, or I should have what does the person say? You said that there were two different kinds. There was uninsured and underinsured.
Well, they're actually the same thing.
Okay.
They just protect you in either one of those situations.
If there's no insurance by the other person.
If the person who hit you doesn't have any insurance to pay you, they can still be legal. By the way, in the state of Florida, the minimum requirement is somebody driving down the street just has the personal injury protection, which pays for themselves, and money to pay you for the damage to your car. They don't have to carry insurance that pays you for damage to your person, and they're still legal. And in many instances, that's what the insurance agent will refer to as having full coverage. You have the minimum required coverage, and that's really...
So it might be my fault. I go in and say, look, I don't want to pay much money here, and the poor insurance agent...
It could be, but it would be nice if that was explained to you so you understood that, where you say, I don't have enough money, because typically buying a little bit extra liability coverage is not that expensive.
Okay.
The problem is that in order to get the uninsured motorist coverage, most times they're going to require you to increase the amount of bodily injury coverage so that you carry some to pay the other person as well. But that could be limits as low as $20,000 or $40,000 or $50,000. It doesn't have to be in the hundreds.
All right. Yeah, Mr. Sullivan.
I just wanted to echo what Paul said, and I wanted to make sure people don't confuse coverage with no-fault coverage. No-fault is insurance coverage that you're required to carry, which basically you pay your own medical bills and lost wages up to $10,000. So to drive in Florida, you have to have that no-fault insurance. But the greatest danger that we as drivers have is not that we're going to hit somebody and be sued for lots of money. The greatest danger for the majority of drivers is that they will be hit by someone who has minimal or no insurance. And if you do not have that coverage, you are out of luck. You can have injuries and bills worth $50,000, and if that person has $10,000 of liability coverage, that's all you receive. Coverage fills that gap, and I cannot stress how important that is, because as I said, the greatest danger that you face as a driver is to be hit by somebody with no insurance.
Well, Mr. Berg, then if I'm going to go in and buy insurance and say I'm worried that I'll have enough so they don't sue me, to insurance coverage to pay the other person if I cause the damage, say I buy $100,000, what should I get in or to protect me?
You should get as much as you can afford.
Okay.
If you can afford to get $100,000 to pay for somebody else's injuries, you should feel comfortable to pay the money to get $100,000 to protect yourself. Because, as I pointed out, this happens quite often, that people show up in the office and they've been injured in an accident, and the amount of their damages can easily rise to $100,000 very quickly in most cases nowadays, just as a result of the cost of medical care and treatment, the expense of losing your work for several months, and the having money for pain and suffering. It's real important to get that uninsured motorist coverage and get it in the amounts as high as you can afford to do so. It is a tough situation when you have to explain to somebody in the office that they have a great case and that they've been terribly injured, but unfortunately there's little or nothing you can do for them because the person who hit them doesn't have any money and doesn't have any insurance. Not that they were illegal, they just don't have any insurance to pay you. And they are left without adequate compensation. It's a very tough situation.
So the state laws do not require people to buy insurance to protect you if they hurt you.
That's correct. This is a situation, unfortunately, where the legislature hasn't stepped in and made any changes, and you've got to take the steps to protect yourself. And in my estimation, it's more important to protect yourself than to buy insurance to protect the other guy. You should protect yourself, and that includes getting enough insurance to protect your assets if you, in fact, are the cause of an accident, but just as important, if not more so, to have enough insurance to protect yourself and your family by having enough money for loss of income and medical bills if that uninsured or underinsured person runs into you.
Okay. Then, well, Mr. Sullivan, when you're talking about that and you're talking about buying insurance, what do you recommend that people do other than pull out their policy and take a look at it?
Well, they should pull out their policy and take a look at it. I think everybody should understand their insurance policy, and if they don't understand it, they should talk to their agent. I think the agents want to help people understand the coverages and want people to have proper insurance. And only by talking to your agent and understanding the coverages and understanding what's out there can they make an intelligent decision.
So,
but generally, you don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish, and by that I mean, you know, save $5 a month on your insurance. You should have really as much insurance as you could reasonably afford when it comes to automobiles.
okay. Well, we have a question for you, and that is in the area of the Terry Schiavo type case. So I'm going to kind of paraphrase it and ask you something. What is the Florida Bar providing on its Florida Bar website, and what is it that Terry Schiavo, the lady who was incapacitated for a number of years and was living off of, I guess, feeding tubes or being hand-fed, what is it she could have done to give direction when she could no longer talk?
Well, as I understand the situation, she was in she had a medical condition which resulted in her in not being able to make decisions about her health. And in that case, in that particular case, it was left to the courts to decide what would happen. In Florida, you have an alternative to letting the courts decide what happens to you, and that is by preparing your own living will. And basically, the difference between a living will and a regular will is a regular will controls your assets when you pass away. So if you want so much to go to your children and so much to go to the church, you put that in your will. A living will controls what medical treatment you receive if you are unable to make that decision yourself. And basically what the Florida Bar has done to help people understand this situation, understand the problem, is that on their website they explain the different options available to you. You can go online, you can look at the different forms, and basically, Russ, what they do is they explain certain conditions that you can have before all efforts to sustain your life are stopped. And you can have it so that you can have a feeding tube, or you can have it so that if you need a feeding tube, it's not going to be done. And you can be as specific as you want, but you know, that's something that everyone can do. And you know, after seeing what happened with poor Terry Schiavo, you can understand why it would have solved a lot of heartache and a lot of problems if she had had that type of document before she had her accident.
Well, if someone was going to prepare that document, say they don't have a lot of money, they're afraid to go to a lawyer, or if they were to go to a lawyer, what kind of money are we talking about?
Well,
do you have any idea about that? I know that the more work that has to go into it, the more time, the more it may cost, but how does that work?
Well, you know, lawyers charge different things, and I'm not familiar with what lawyers charge throughout the county for wills and that sort of thing, other than in a very general way. But I would think that if you ask around, you can find lawyers that will prepare a will for in the neighborhood of $150 on up. And a lot of it depends on your asset situation. But you know, I would be very careful about doing any of these paperwork yourself without having a lawyer explain it, because you can have an understanding and you can look at the forms and you can go to the bar website, which I'd like to have a minute to give that to people. I don't know if...
Go ahead.
I don't know if they had, I think they may have been preparing something to show on the screen, but it's, go ahead and give it. It's FLABAR.org.
Okay. Well, we may get an opportunity here in the control room if they can. There it is.
There it is.
www.floridabar.org.
Right. And, right. That has a lot of information, but once you have that information...
That's under the consumer services?
Right. I think there's a link to that, and it's one of the sites you can visit under the Florida Bar umbrella.
Okay.
But once you have that information, you really should talk to a lawyer to develop the specific plan for you. And, you know, it's a few $100s, but, I mean, it's money well spent. You're saving your family just a tremendous amount of heartache, worry. You know, if you are somebody that doesn't want a lot of artificial means used to keep you alive, not to mention the money. I mean, you know, one day in a hospital can be several $1,000s, so you're talking a few $100s to eliminate that expense. So,
okay. All right. Well, we've got a question for Mr. Green. And Mr. Green, this is in the family arena. My wife received an inheritance during our marriage, and now she wants a divorce. Am I entitled to any of that property?
That actually, Russ, is going to depend on what she did with the property, or the money, or depending on what the inheritance was. If she received, for instance, real estate, a home, from her parents or whoever passed away, if she keeps that property in her own name and does not join her husband into the property, generally that would be her property throughout the marriage and outside of the marital estate. And when I say marital estate, once you marry, everything you acquire together goes into the marital estate.
What about title? What if we're married, and you and I are married? Of course, you can't do that in Florida, but a man and a woman are married.
Right.
All right, and they while they're working, take their working dollars and buy a piece of property. But they only put it in the wife's name.
It doesn't matter whose name you put it in if you've purchased it with marital funds, funds you've earned during the marriage. Right. It's still marital property, and that'll get divided equitably, which is generally 50-50.
So now one of them, say the wife inherits property, and she puts it into in her own name. Does it stay separate?
Correct. When she inherits it, and it would go in her name, you know, through the will or...
On a divorce.
On a divorce, it would just stay in her name, correct.
What if she put it in her husband's name?
Then
her name?
Then she has problems. It's presumed to be a gift, and unless she can show some special equity or some reason that was done, for instance, for estate planning purposes or something, that would then become marital property and would be divided at the dissolution equitably.
All right. All right. So you want to be careful how you title it if you got it from outside the marriage.
If you get it from outside the marriage, I always suggest to people that they keep it in their own names, that they don't commingle. If it were money, keep the money in a separate account in your own name. Don't commingle it with your spouse.
Okay.
Until you're certain. Once you put your spouse's name on that property or on that account, you're presumed to have given your spouse a gift, and that's half your inheritance or half your money.
Okay. But you're allowed to have a separate account.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But if you start a separate account during the marriage and you put, for instance, somebody works at Piper, somebody works at Publix, and if the party working at Publix starts a savings account and puts all the money she makes from Publix into the account, and the husband takes his check and that's what they pay their bills with, just because that money's in her name, it's still marital funds, it will get equitably divided at the dissolution.
And you would not want to take your inheritance and put it in that same account you put your Publix earnings.
No, once you do that, you've commingled it.
Okay.
and it becomes marital property.
All right. We have one where a person is a victim of a crime. So whoever would like to take this, let me go through the question. I was the victim of a crime. The judge ordered that the defendant, so the person who committed the crime, pay me restitution. I got a civil lien against that person. How long is the civil lien valid, and how do I go about collecting it? Anybody done any civil liens?
Well, I'll take a stab at the first
right.
part of it, and then the civil
Bobby
guys.
Guttridge?
The civil guys can worry about the lien part. But what happens in these situations is the judge will typically order the restitution as part of probation, and almost always when there is restitution to be paid, or this money to be paid back to a victim for some kind of injury they received or some sort of damages they received, they will be put on probation. Unfortunately, what happens a lot of these times is that people will violate their probation. They'll get jail time, their probation will somehow terminate, and they will never pay the money back. And also, you really can't, if you don't have the ability to pay, the state is really not allowed to put you in jail. If you can show that you don't have the ability to pay the restitution and didn't agree to it specifically as part of the sentence. So at that point, it becomes a lien like any other lien, and you get the money if you can get it. I'm assuming the lien will stay on you as any lien would stay on you, basically forever until you can pay it.
Okay.
It's
Mr. Sullivan.
once the criminal court determines that you don't have the financial ability to pay it, they reduce it to a money judgment.
Okay.
And the money judgment is the same type of judgment that if you went into a small claims court and Judge Judy sided with you and gave you that judgment. And a judgment is a piece of paper that lets
So
you...
it's for dollars.
Right.
It's for
A
dollars.
judgment is a piece of paper that gives you a right to spend more money to try and get the money you're owed. That's kind of,
But when they say, how do I go about collecting a lien?
Well-
so you have this judgment, right?
it's
so
a
it's
judgment.
a document.
Well, that gets very complicated, but
Yeah.
basically, if you can locate assets or things of value that the person has, such as cars, bank accounts, in some cases property other than their home or homestead, you can have the sheriff's office seize that property, and if it's money, the judge will give it to you directly. If it's a car, you can have the car sold at an auction, and it's sold to the highest bidder, and then that money is used to satisfy your judgment.
All right.
It gets complicated.
What are we talking about when we have garnishing wages? Because this person says, can I garnish the wages?
Well, garnishing wages is a court order directing the employee or employer to send part of a paycheck to the person that owns the judgment. So,
All right. So you can go after part of the wages.
yes, but
There's a limit on that, though, isn't there?
you cannot garnish the wages of someone who is the head of a household. So in other words,
Right.
if you have a spouse or you support children, your wages are not subject or cannot be garnished.
None of them.
No.
Okay.
And one thing you need to understand with regards to that is the criminal court, once it becomes a lien, they'll give you no relief. You then have to file a lawsuit or go after them civilly like anything else. You can't go and get the state attorney's office to get involved, or the criminal court judge that initially entered the order to give you any relief or to help you out in garnishing the wages or somehow collecting against this lien.
So when you said the civil guys will have to tell you more about this, what you meant was the lawyers that do the civil side
Right.
compared to the criminal. So now the judge is through. It's become a judgment or a dollar figure on a piece of paper,
Exactly.
and it's no longer something that would send the person back to jail.
Exactly. But, one thing, a lot of the people that get these civil liens on them, the judges order these civil liens for one thing or another. They'll order it court costs, or they'll order it for restitution purposes. They think that they just don't have to pay it. That's absolutely not true. The money, it accrues interest at a very high rate, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. When they finally get their feet back underneath them and they want to try and really become productive citizens, put their problems behind them, or the incident that got them into trouble to begin with behind them, they can sometimes get into some real financial issues with buying homes and those sorts of things.
So it can ruin your credit.
Ruin your credit, and if you didn't tell your wife about it and you got married, it could ruin your marriage.
Okay. Well, we've got somebody who's a property owner in Indian River County, and they live in a community that has a homeowners association. And they've lived in their home for 20 years. Under the homeowners rules, it says you cannot build a fence, but they want to do this anyway. I mean, you can tell this is the beginning of the problem. You know what the rules are. They say you can't do this, but I want to do it. All right. Do these rules ever expire, and when do they expire? Anybody want to take a shot at that?
I'll take a short stab at it.
All right.
There's, the short answer is I don't think they expire, ever. There is a law out there called the Market Record Title Act, which in some instances might extinguish certain claims that are on real property, but I don't think it's going to apply in this situation. And as you pointed out, in a situation where you join and belong to a homeowners association, knowing what the rules are to begin with, it's a difficult thing to come in later and try and change them. You're going to have to go through the system and try to get the board to change the bylaws or the covenants and declarations, if that's even possible, to effectuate putting up a new fence. In many instances, you're just not going to be able to do it, and if you attempt to do it, then you're going to be asking for a lawsuit more than likely.
And that would mean they would take the fence down and charge you for taking it down.
That means that they would hire attorneys who would then get court orders to take the fence down, who would then assess you for attorney's fees and costs in addition to the cost of taking the fence down. In what was a small problem to begin with turns into a very expensive problem at the end.
Russ, I think it would make a difference, wouldn't it, Paul, if it was in the covenants that are recorded, it would be difficult to change. But if they were part of like architectural guidelines or something, and they had an architectural review board, they generally can change their guidelines at any time. And
right.
If it's part of that, and if they agreed to permit the fence, that's possible.
So they want to look at what the rules are that govern. No fence.
Right, how the rule is. Whether the rule's a covenant that runs with the land and it's a deed restriction, or whether it's just part of guidelines for the construction of the certain residences on the property.
So if they had a homeowners association, it may require a 2/3 vote of all the homeowners, or the rules themselves would explain how you change the
It would,
homeowners.
and it would depend, as Norman said, as to whether it was still a covenant that ran with the land versus something else, because even if it's something running with the land, you may not be able to do it by vote.
Okay. And the person wanted to know, do the rules have to be renewed somehow? So,
Yeah.
probably not, right? You'll
There's-
agree on that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. See what else we have. Then, Mr. Guttridge. Now, we've had in the news lately something about leftover pills. You know, there was an incident involving criminal charges perhaps being, or at least an investigation started regarding some leftover pills. But can I give my leftover prescription pills to someone else? And what are the penalties?
The short answer is no.
Okay.
Unless you're a pharmacist or you have a prescription, and even then you can't do it. The leftover pills are just not allowed. It's a third-degree felony on almost every prescription pill if you don't have a prescription to possess those pills. It's also a delivery charge. It's just like a sale charge if you give them to somebody and they don't have a prescription for them. And it's really can be pretty serious with these, and you see it, I think, most often with pain pills. Somebody will have a headache, or somebody will just like the pain pills, and they're like, you know, the doctor, I went and had surgery, the doctor gave these to me, here you have them. And unfortunately, one thing that people don't realize with a lot of these hydrocodone and some of these stronger pain medications is about 8 pills, it's 4 grams, gets you into the trafficking statute. And even if you give your own pill to somebody, you're then delivering it. And even though you had a valid prescription for it and you had valid possession of those pills, you then fall into the trafficking statute. And
So
the person
trafficking in drugs.
trafficking in drugs. And for the 4 grams, which would be about 8 pills on most of these pills, that is a 3-year minimum mandatory sentence. And there's no gain time. You have to do all 3 years of that if you get convicted of the trafficking charges. And the state attorney's office and law enforcement take that pretty seriously. And you'll see people get charged under the trafficking statute for giving away their own pills.
And that is a 3-year minimum
It's
mandatory.
a 3-year minimum mandatory at that level, and then you get them to higher levels. They can get up to 25-year. But you'd really have to give a lot of pills
Yeah.
for that, but not as many as you may think. You know, one large prescription may get you up to that. I mean, sometimes these prescriptions will come in 50 or 100 pills.
Yeah.
And if you give that away, you can get up into the 25-year minimum mandatories. I haven't seen that, but I have seen people get charged with possession of those pills. And even one pill, you're just riding around, you've got a headache, you're going to take it when you get home. It's not really so uncommon. You get a ticket on the way home. This officer says, you know, can I search you, or something. You think nothing of it, and all of a sudden they pull this pill out, and you're being charged with a 3rd-degree felony. And that's you know, a real problem in this county and almost every county.
Okay. All right. Okay, Paul Berg. I've got one involving dog bite liability. I bought a Rottweiler and I rent my home. Can I obtain coverage for injuries caused by the dog if this dog were to injure somebody?
Yes, you can, but it's real difficult these days when you're dealing with dogs like Rottweilers, Pit Bulls, and Doberman Pinschers and those sorts of dogs. It's important to have insurance, and in this case, the person is a renter, and a lot of people who rent don't think about insurance. They think the homeowner, who is the landlord, should have the insurance. But in a situation where you have a dog like a Rottweiler, or in fact, for any particular reason, you should go out and obtain tenant's policy as well. But it's real important when you're talking to your agent that you ask them about any exclusions, because many times when you go in and you get a homeowner's policy or a renter's policy, you just assume that you will be covered in all of these situations, and you should ask specifically if you have a dog, whether it excludes all dogs or certain particular breeds of dogs. That's become real popular with the insurance companies to try to hold down their liability, and in many instances it's not fully explained. So it's a situation where you just have to go in and again develop a relationship with that insurance agent, ask a lot of questions, and try to get the best coverage you can get. And if it's not available from that particular agent or company, maybe try a different one.
So the best thing you can do is to call your insurance agent and say,
Absolutely.
or if you don't have one, call one and say, I'm renting,
Or
get some.
yes, and also, just as Mr. Sullivan expressed earlier about auto insurance, pull out the policy you have now. You may just be a homeowner and assume that it covers your little dog. And in many instances, we find instances where small dogs, Cocker Spaniels and those sorts of things, have been involved in some pretty serious dog bites, many times to small children. And they come to find out later on that there's an exclusion for all animals, and it doesn't differentiate between a Doberman Pinscher and a Cocker Spaniel. And you could be looking at a situation with some serious injuries that could result in somebody coming back against you, and you find out when it's too late that you don't have coverage. So talk to your insurance agent about that.
All right. So if you're renting and you have a dog and a friend comes over with a tiny baby, there could be something that could come out of that.
There could be any number of reasons, yeah. It's not always just about the dog. There's many instances where you can be found responsible, but the dog situation has been a real problem recently because of the exclusions in those policies that people just aren't aware about, and it's something you really should pull out your policy and read it and check it, or talk to your agent about it.
Okay, we have a question that came in concerning personal liability, and it deals with condos. There are 2 condo units, one upstairs and one downstairs. The upstairs unit accidentally damages the lower condo unit because the water heater in the upstairs condo breaks, causing flooding. Both units are unoccupied the evening of the flooding, and the floors, the carpet, tile, fixtures, all are damaged, and both units are temporarily unlivable. The owner of the downstairs unit has no insurance. Can they recover?
Well, I'll take that, Russ. I've had that on a number of occasions. The answer is maybe. It depends. I mean, just because water comes from upstairs and floods your apartment doesn't mean the guy upstairs is automatically responsible. He needed to have done something wrong, be basically negligent, have not maintained the water heater, have known that it was leaking and done nothing about it. those sorts of situations where he could have done something about it or he knew and failed to do it. But simply a water pipe breaking, those things occur, and that's why people carry insurance the same way that if you're in a single-family house and a tree falls on your house or lightning strikes in the middle of a thunderstorm and creates a small fire or something like that, that you've protected yourself. So again, going back to the important thing, which is get some insurance.
The one
talk
on the
to
downstairs, even
the insurance,
though
yeah, the downstairs guy should have some insurance in place. If he didn't, like in this situation, his ability to collect from the person upstairs is going to be dependent upon whether or not the guy upstairs did something wrong.
Okay, Mr. Sullivan?
Well, right. You have to have some sort of fault on the person.
Okay.
That's generally, there has to be a fault. You're not strictly liable for somebody that's damaged because of your water heater breaks.
All right. Well, if I'm the type of person that doesn't like to invest in water heaters, and I've been there 30 years.
You mean you don't have a water heater?
I have one, but I'm not going to buy a new one.
Well, you have a lawsuit, like Paul said. The answer is maybe, and the problem you have with all those cases is that that's a question that will only be answered in court after you've spent a lot of money and a lot of time presenting your case to a judge or a jury.
So really, the person downstairs should have their own insurance to protect
Sure.
themselves.
Sure.
Okay. And we all agree on that.
Yeah.
And the best thing you can do is try to protect yourself.
In every instance, you should
In
try to
every
protect yourself.
Okay.
You can't count on the other person protecting you, and in many instances, you can't count on getting a full day's justice in court, as we've seen with civil infractions in criminal court or
And
restitution
criminal,
issues.
yeah. And that's what we're seeing in these questions here. The people are really tending to ask, can I shift recovery to somebody else? Can I make somebody else pay for my loss? And a lot of what I'm hearing you all say is, well, you can buy insurance for yourself that'll avoid that, especially in the automobile area that people may not think of, or the renter area. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, let's go to Mr. Green. Somebody called in and they said that we are divorcing after 15 years. My husband works as and has a retirement plan from his employer. I have an IRA. Will I be entitled to any of his pension? So the wife is calling in, been married 15 years.
She would be entitled to a portion of the pension, if not half the pension, depending on when they started the marriage, did he already have anything in the pension? In other words, if they got married and neither one had a pension, and then during the marriage, his employer provided a pension and he paid into the pension, and in the meantime she was doing an IRA, they would equitably divide those. Generally, they'd each get half. And there's a method the court has to divide those assets.
Special order to divide
Special
those.
order to
Okay.
divide those. Now, if, for instance, they were married 15 years, but he had been working somewhere for 25 years, 10 of which prior to the marriage, a certain portion of that pension that the accountants can generally figure out would be excised from the marital estate. It would be what's known as premarital property, and it would be outside the marital estate and not subject to division by the court.
Okay. All right. So it's going to depend on how much of it was accumulated during the marriage or collected during the marriage.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Mr. Guttridge, now you weren't the lawyer that came to the Indian River County Bar Association and started giving one of our volunteers a lot of drinks and then we tested them? Was that?
That was
That was several years ago.
That was you that did that,
It was
didn't
myself and my wife, actually.
Okay,
We
right.
got dosed up.
you? And you
She got a
were,
lot drunker than I did.
and you tested, I mean, you helped the lawyers understand how many drinks it takes, and that was the goal of
Right.
the lesson. Well, I've got a question for you then. How many drinks does it take to get a DUI?
Well, like all the vague answers that we've been giving, that depends. It really depends on your size, your ability to tolerate alcohol. There's really two ways of proving a DUI. You can blow over the limit, which is a .08. You can take the breathalyzer and register a reading over .08, or you can be impaired. And that's really sort of a judgment call. They present evidence of how you were driving, what you looked like, a videotape. So some of it depends upon the tolerance of your alcohol. If you get really drunk with one drink, you may look impaired, you may be impaired, but you may not blow
Okay.
over the limit. Typically, it takes a couple drinks for a woman to get over the limit. A man my size, you know, the 200-pound range, 190-pound range, 185-pound range.
Is that wishful thinking, or is this?
Wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Well, I heard Chuck over here laughing, and so I figured I'd.
Well, he's
point
actually an
down.
athlete. I mean,
It doesn't take much to get him drunk, I don't think.
Really?
Just
Okay.
you know, 3 or 4, and you can see noticeable signs of impairment.
Okay.
But a person of his size, it weighs about 150, 160 pounds. The amount that it takes to actually blow over the limit, the amount of alcohol that saturates your blood, will be much quicker. He can't drink as much as I could drink, and have a low reading. Now,
but how many are we talking? Say with that type of person. What do you?
For
Go
me,
ahead.
I've looked at it. I
Yeah.
mean, you don't know for sure until you actually blow.
Yeah.
But the general consensus is 150, 160 pounds. You need 3 to 4 drinks,
Like a beer or whiskey?
beer, or an
Okay.
ounce of alcohol.
Okay.
And if I had 4 drinks within an hour and didn't have much to eat, or maybe had a light meal,
Okay.
I would be over the legal limit according to the standard consumption of alcohol that they use on the charts.
And are you going to feel it more too, you think?
Well, that really is an individual question. You know, some people tolerate alcohol a lot better than others. That's why they
Okay.
have the statute to prove it 2 ways. You can be impaired. You can be under the legal limit, as Bobby said, but still be impaired.
Okay.
But you can be over the legal limit and look sober, feel sober, act sober, but you're still guilty in the eyes of the law because your blood alcohol level is above 0.08.
Well, Bobby, on that, what do you, like a person who's 200 pounds, what do you say?
well, in my case, when we actually did the dosing, I think I had was 6 drinks. You remember that? I think it was 6 drinks,
Yeah.
and I was right at a 0.08. I was barely under, and I felt intoxicated. I did feel like I was impaired by alcohol. My wife is about 115, 120. She only had a couple drinks, and she was way over the limit. And
Oh,
she
okay.
was really acting it. She was intoxicated.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as a general rule, that just can kind of give you an idea. But if you drink a lot, you may not show any signs of impairment even after 8 or 9 or 10 drinks. Or if you're not, and you see this a lot with DUIs, people that don't drink seem to get a DUI because they never drink. Their ability to handle alcohol is not very good. So they'll go out with their friend who's home from college or a birthday party, and they'll have 1 or 2 drinks and think they're fine, and all of a sudden, you know, they are getting a DUI because they act very impaired and they are very close to the legal limit.
Okay. Now, if you're getting stopped for a taillight being out at night, you just left the Riverside or some bar, someplace, you've got a real liability facing you there, don't you? I mean, there's a potential.
For a taillight?
Well, not for the taillight, if you had been drinking.
Well, it's surprising how many people get pulled over for that. They go out drinking, their taillights aren't working.
Check your taillights.
But you
Yeah,
can
check your taillights.
DUIs are very, very expensive. The fines and the penalties are just horrible for people. And not to mention the stress that puts in their lives. And every year the legislator adds something to the DUI statute. Now, for your first one, if you blow over a 2.0, which is very intoxicated, you have to have an ignition interlock device. This is on a first DUI. An ignition interlock device, which you have to blow into on your car before it'll start, showing you don't have any alcohol in your system. And you have to have that for 2 years. And it's very expensive. There's none here. You have to either go down to Fort Lauderdale or go down to Orlando. You have to go every month and get it checked, get the computer downloaded. Not to mention car impoundments, all on first-time DUIs, fines, and if you get in some sort of a fender bender accident, the judges here are actually giving people jail time.
All we're doing is singing the praises of designated driver here.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So the recommendation is,
Designated driver.
Don't drink and drive, and if you
Yeah.
do, make sure your tail lights aren't out.
yeah, check your car, have somebody else drive your car if you're going to drink.
And they have that new program now where they'll come and actually pick up your car and take your car home.
For
A lot
you.
of people, that's one of the things they don't want to do. They don't want to leave their car at the bar. They're afraid that their car will get vandalized or something will happen, or they just don't want to wake up and not have their car in the morning. There's a new program out. I'm not sure who's putting it on, but you see it advertised. I think that the Budweiser people have something to do with it. I know they're one of the sponsors. but they actually will go there, pick up your car, drive you home, and have somebody drive your car back to your house. So there's no reason that anybody can't utilize that program.
I was going to tell you, Russ, too, that I've sat down and calculated the costs for a DUI, and even if you don't hire a lawyer, that you will spend in excess of $5,000 by the time you're done. Because you not only have the fines, the DUI school, and all the things we've talked about, but your insurance goes up, missing time from work, and all of those are direct economic costs. So, you know, when you consider how cheap it is to get a ride or use the designated driver program or one of the local bus services,
Sure,
your
just
friends,
call.
I mean, it's a no contest. It's so much cheaper.
Right. Right. Well, I want to thank you, attorneys, for coming in tonight, and I want to go down the line again. And Mr. Green, can you say something to warn the people about the call-ins we've had tonight?
To warn them?
Yeah. What have we learned here tonight, or what are we trying to teach them?
Well, in the marital and family area,
Sure.
unless you're really sure about your spouse and you get an inheritance, I'd keep it in my own name.
Okay. Yeah.
If there's ever, you know, if there's a problem in the marriage and it's a little bit rocky, and then you're fortunate enough to get an inheritance or get some money from outside the marriage, if you keep it separate, that's probably the best bet.
Okay. Mr. Sullivan, Chuck Sullivan?
I would say of the things we've talked about, one of the most important is to educate yourself about living wills, healthcare surrogates, and make those decisions while you're alive, and that you're able to make them so that they don't have to be made for you when something tragic happens.
Okay. And Paul Bird?
I think that in the area of civil litigation and personal injury, it's real important to talk with your insurance agent, pull out your insurance policies both for your house and your car, and review those closely to see that you've got the coverages in the amounts that you need and for the circumstances that you have
So for your
cover
car,
yourself.
the house, a renter?
Every situation, and
Yeah.
be certain it's enough that it's the right coverage to protect you, and that you've made that choice to buy the insurance that's going to take care of you and your family in those situations that you need.
Okay. And Bobby Guttridge?
And thanks, Russ. You know, I think one of the great things about these programs, and I've done them in the past and had people come up to me, is they get informed so they don't make bad decisions. In the area of criminal law, they don't go out and get the DUI because they realize how difficult it is. In the area of civil litigation, they don't go without the insurance. They get the insurance, the UM coverage or the renter's insurance, and we're allowing them to see that for free, something they won't. If they don't listen to the advice that we're giving them today, then it's going to cost them an awful lot more later. And it's an awesome program to give people some food for thought.
Well, thank you for taking your time out this evening, and we really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. We're going to take a break now. We're going to go off the air for about 5 minutes and bring on some additional guests. They're going to talk about Law Week. So we have some of the lawyers that have been volunteering to get Law Week started off this week, and we'll see you in a couple minutes. Thank you.
A look at the Travel City's forecast for the rest of the day, showing temperatures reaching the mid-90s in New York City, Chicago, and Minneapolis. We'll see temperatures nearing 100 in Dallas under partly sunny skies, upper 80s for Atlanta, 91 in Miami with partial sunshine there as well. Further west, look for 88 in Denver with partly sunny skies, a pleasant 82 for Seattle with drier conditions there, and we'll see 70s and 80s along the California coastline. Overnight lows dip into the 70s across the entire eastern half of the country. We may see 80s in some spots as well as the very humid air remains in place. Expect cooler 50s and 60s across the coast of California. For tomorrow, the cooler air will begin to work down into the northern and central Rockies as well as the northern plains and upper Midwest, while the heat and humidity continue across the east.
Well, as we mentioned to you, Cisco helped drive stocks lower today, but just how much impact does one company have, this company at least, on other tech companies? Bloomberg's Bob Bowden has been looking at that story for us. Bob?
Well, Casey, Cisco's CEO, John Chambers, did in fact try to offer a silver lining to the story yesterday, saying he's cautiously optimistic of a bottom within the next 1 or 2 quarters. But that offered little comfort to the wide variety of companies that have ties to Cisco. Most saw their shares tumble today. Cisco said demand from Asia and Europe might worsen. Bad news for companies who supply components to Cisco, like Broadcom.
When Cisco sees an order weakness overseas, obviously some of its key suppliers, like a Broadcom, are going to see some order weakness as well.
Analysts at Robertson Stevens say chip suppliers with the most exposure to Cisco are Globespan and PMC Sierra. Other big Cisco suppliers include Jabil Circuit and Selectron, Cisco comprising 15% and 12% of their sales, respectively, according to Patrick Parr of ABN AMRO. On the competitive front, Cisco's report didn't do Juniper Networks any favors.
We're a little bit concerned about Juniper Networks. Juniper's rated add. We did see Cisco gain market share in their space. We also saw that market decline from the prior quarter.
Cisco repeated the point that the market for so-called metro fiber optic networks would be the next big thing. Metro networks hook up major cities to the internet, and Cisco has been pushing to get into the market.
Cisco mentioned in their conference call that Metro would be the next big wave of service provider spending. It was mentioned in Q&A. And I think the key there is that Metro is really the realm of Ethernet and 10 gigabit Ethernet, which stands to benefit some of the smaller players such as a Riverstone, a Foundry, or an Extreme Networks.
But at the end of trading on this Wednesday, Riverstone, Foundry, and the rest were in the red. The broader market, of course, took a hit as well. Eric Marinak of Newbridge Partners says Cisco is a proxy for both global players and growth stocks. Let's show you how the companies did today that we talked about in the story, and they didn't do well. Riverstone, Foundry, and Extreme Networks, the metro fiber companies we mentioned, were all down in today's trading, as you can see. Cisco suppliers Broadcom, Globespan, and PMC Sierra also down. Other suppliers, Jabil Circuit and Selectron, down as well. And with a particularly bad reaction to the Cisco news, shares of competitor Juniper Networks down over 9% today, their 4th consecutive losing session. Casey?
Pretty bleak. Thank you, Bob.
Indeed.
Bob Bowden. All right, well, Cooper Industries has rejected Danaher's $7 billion buyout bid. It calls the unsolicited offer inadequate and says it may consider competing proposals. Chief Executive John Riley tells Bloomberg News that several other companies have contacted Cooper since Danaher's bid became public, and he says more may get in touch in the next few days. Now, Danaher makes those Craftsman tools, and they offered as much as $58 a share in cash and stock last week. Cooper, which makes wrenches and lighting fixtures, asked Credit Suisse First Boston for advice on alternatives, including a merger or an acquisition. Shearing Plow has won FDA approval to market a new drug combination. The company promises to boost, or rather the combination promises to boost the effectiveness of Shearing's hepatitis C medicine Pegintron by combining it with an older treatment from ICN Pharmaceuticals. Now, analysts say the market for the combination may be worth as much as $2 billion a year. Roche Holdings is working on a rival treatment called Pegasus. It's awaiting approval from the FDA. Well, coming up on Market Line, we're going to run down today's top business headlines, all the market-moving stories, of course. Plus, investors have profited from buying spin-offs this year. But what's Wall Street's spin on that style of investing? And should you be buying incoming spin-offs? We've got a report on that, so stay with us.
In the Smith team, you must be professional, have years of experience, and strong technical skills. Productivity and fast service are also important to me and especially our customers. I'm a pretty good judge of character and believe you'll provide the fastest and most professional service. Welcome to the team, Smitty.
Smith Heating and Air Conditioning, a trusted name since 1974.
Smitty, I think you're going to work out just fine.
Bob Stanley here with Senior Life Services. I specialize in final expense life insurance. We choose from many different companies, and the key thing about our life insurance is the premiums always stay the same. They are fixed, especially for senior citizens. Again, at Senior Life Services, we choose from many different companies. Give me a call. Phone number is 562-3962. Bob Stanley at Senior Life, 562-3962.
board today after a disappointing revenue outlook from tech bellwether Cisco Systems. A report from the Federal Reserve showing that weakness in the manufacturing sector is spreading to other parts of the economy added to the selling pressure. Gateway may close its European and Asian operations. This as the struggling PC maker tries to cut costs and return to profitability. And what's the spin on buying shares of spin-offs? Investors have profited so far this year, and we'll tell you about some upcoming spin-offs you may want to investigate. We'll have those stories and more straight ahead here on Bloomberg Market Line. Welcome, everyone. I'm Kathleen Campion. Well, let's talk about stocks. They melted in summer heat as investors worried that continued weakness in the economy would depress corporate profits for longer than expected. Let's take a look at the damage now. The Dow Industrials were down 165.24. The S&P 500 down 21. The NASDAQ Composite down 61.5 points. Now, in the credit markets, Treasuries benefited from the sell-off in stocks as investors sought safety in government debt. The auction of 10-year notes earlier this afternoon met with the best demand the government has seen for its 10-year offerings in 8 years. Well, that's the story on bonds. Let's turn now to Deborah Costrin. She's standing by at the New York Stock Exchange, and she's got the latest on Winn-Dixie. Deborah?
Well, that's right, Kathleen. Thank you very much. In fact, Winn-Dixie reported after the bell today, and of course, Winn-Dixie, one of the nation's largest retail food chains and grocery stores, and in fact, they actually met the street at 34 cents, and however, it was a pretty big jump compared with a year ago of 14 cents a share. They also said they completed their restructuring plan. Now, that restructuring plan included opening 17 new stores, acquiring 77, closing 20, and also enlarging a few. So now they have about 1,153 stores compared to 1,079 a year ago. Also, at the bell, news that came right at the closing bell, that was Nortel. Nortel looks like they're going to be selling some convertible notes to raise about $1 billion. And so Nortel, we did see a little bit of sell pressure right near the close, down 53 cents during the regular session, likely to have an impact on tomorrow's trade. If we take a look at today's wrap, and what we did see, of course, the beige book had a pretty significant impact, and a lot of traders talking about the fact that today's report was really just a prelude to the Fed meeting on August the 21st. A lot of traders saying looks like we're definitely going to get a quarter and not likely to get a half, but discussion on the half side. And also what they're talking about, a lot of conflicting analyst reports over the past week that the market is really trying to figure out, and also a little bit of market overreaction today with the beige book, mainly because we don't have as much volume as we typically have, but we actually had a pretty good day. But still, sometimes the traders were saying a little bit of aberration in the market when we have not so good news and not a whole lot to help bring the markets back. Let's take a look at the weak sectors today. We had tech, also telecom and insurance. In fact, we could add several different sectors to this list: software, utility, broker-dealer, drugs. And taking a look at the strong sectors on the day, gold, publishing, and also beverages. In fact, Coke was the only gainer on the Dow 30 today. So that helped to put beverages on one of the plus side. Back to you, Kathleen.
Deborah, thanks very much. Deborah Costrin. Well, the selling was most intense in the tech sector, leaving the NASDAQ Composite with its biggest decline in a month. Soledad De Leon is at the NASDAQ market site to wrap up today's action. And Soledad, even though we know that earnings season is pretty much wrapping up, we have a few more announcements trickling in. What have you got for us?
We certainly do. And one I want to talk about with you is Western Wireless. They announced their second quarter results after the bell. And I'm mentioning this one in particular because it is down significantly in after-hours trading. So, of course, we're going to watch it closely tomorrow and see if that trend continues tomorrow. This company sells mobile phone services in 19 of the western states, and it says that its loss widened to 18 cents a share. That's about $14 million over last year when it was about 7 cents a share. That was a loss of 7 cents. It missed the street's estimate by about 3 cents. Analysts were expecting the company to say they had a loss of about 15 cents a share. Now, that stock traded down $3 today, or about 8%. But again, I said in after-hours trading down significantly. Just want to wrap up what happened in the overall market today. It was not a pretty day. If you are a bull in this market, if you're a short seller, you might have enjoyed it. For the past week, investors and traders have been telling me that they're looking for some solid news to grab onto to get this market out of that sort of 1% up, 1% down down trading range, and they got it today in that negative beige book report. When that report came out at 2, the market started to plunge. NASDAQ 100 closing down 4.1%. Speaking to Uri Landesman, who's the chief investment officer of AFA Management Partners, he tells me the short sellers were just ruling the roost today, and you definitely saw that. Every subsector on the NASDAQ closed down today, from transportation to biotech. One of the worst performing groups being the software companies, and also biotech being pretty down. Back to you.
Okay, Soledad, thanks very much. Now we're going to take a quick look at our top business stories. The Fed says the long-standing weakness in manufacturing has spread to the rest of the economy. It says economic growth was stagnant at best in most parts of the United States in June and July. And turning our attention to Gateway, they're thinking about making a major change, a restructuring effort there to return to profitability. It's thinking of pulling out of European and Asian markets, reducing in-house manufacturing, and eliminating custom options for consumer PCs. Chief Executive Ted Waite tells Bloomberg News that exiting overseas markets might mean firing another 2,500 employees. Goldman Sachs Group is telling its analysts to disclose ownership of shares in companies mentioned in their research reports. That's in line with new industry guidelines on conflicts of interest. But Merrill Lynch and Credit Suisse First Boston have gone farther. They are banning analysts from owning stocks that they cover. When we come back, stocks may have sold off in today's session, but our next guest remains optimistic. We'll hear why when David Spica, Senior Portfolio Manager, Bank of America Capital Management, joins us next. Stay with us.
Mrs. Lindsay. William.
Hello, Stephen.
You're not by any chance computer shopping, are you?
Mm-hmm. If I can get some help.
Well, right now, you can get a complete Dell system with an Intel Pentium 4 processor, which is so nice, for only $9.99.
Really?
She's intrigued. Excellent. Because right now, it comes with your choice of a free CD burner or DVD upgrade. And as far as service and support, Dell's won more awards than any other PC company in the last 5 years. Just call or go online. Tell them what you want, and right to your front door comes America's favorite PC.
Thanks, Stephen.
Now you can get a Dell desktop with an Intel Pentium 4 processor, which delivers performance where you need it most. And 6 months of DellNet by MSN Internet access for just $9.99. Call or go online today and get a free CD burner or DVD upgrade. There's great deals on notebooks, too.
Dude, you're getting a Dell.
Easy to buy, easy to own, easy as Dell.
Before you can choose, you need to know what there is to choose from. And the internet tells you. So, predictably, some people now want to tax it. Well, taxing means taking something away. In this case, your right to choose. Do we have to make the same mistakes every time?
As New York ends its trading day, we turn our attention to the start of business in Japan.
From the heart of Tokyo Stock Exchange, we analyze the latest market moves using exclusive Bloomberg information. And from the Hong Kong markets, we look for
trends, as well as indicators in Singapore trading.
How markets are beginning to react in Australia.
This means you get the right information first, only with Bloomberg's Moneycast Asia.
Aetna has posted a loss more than 3 times the size that Wall Street was expecting. The nation's biggest health insurer didn't raise premiums enough to offset higher medical costs. Aetna's second quarter loss from operations came to 67 cents a share. Analysts look for a loss, but more like a 20-cent a share loss. Aetna left itself vulnerable to rising medical costs by offering discounts on premiums in recent years to attract new business. Now it's being forced to pull its HMOs out of markets in California and in Georgia as it drops almost 2 million customers. Shares of Polo Ralph Lauren rode high in the saddle today. The clothing company has reported a 22% rise in first quarter profits. Polo Ralph Lauren boosted profit by cutting costs and selling more women's clothing. The company was also helped by sales gains in Europe and by lower production costs. For the quarter, Polo earned 30 cents a share, matching street estimates. Sales rose more than 6% to $517 million. Looking ahead, despite the economic slowdown, Polo says it's on track to meet its full-year estimates. And Ford is saying that the number of consumers planning to buy Explorer sports utility vehicles has dropped, and it's partly because of the publicity surrounding the Firestone tire recall. Chief Executive Jack Masser told an investor conference that market research shows a significant drop. Compared to 2 years ago, he says people who already own Fords remain loyal, but among those who don't, fewer say they want to buy the best-selling sports utility. Now, Explorer sales have fallen 16% this year. Sport utility sales overall, including new models, are up 11%. Well, a bleak outlook for Cisco is what weighed on the market today. A less than favorable assessment of economic growth, as evidenced by the Fed's Beige Book, also weighed in. Still, David Spica, who is portfolio manager at Bank of America Capital Management, remains optimistic. So what is he seeing that many investors are not? Let's ask him. David, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Kathleen.
You are sounding more optimistic in your notes than most investors are feeling today. Why is that?
Well, we are non-consensus thinkers. We believe that the best way to make money in the stock market is by going ahead of the crowd, going against the crowd, doing what everyone else believes is the wrong thing to do. If you think back to the first quarter of 2000, everybody was optimistic. Everybody wanted to own stocks, and look what happened. So we think now is definitely the right time to be getting into the market, particularly when the market starts pricing in better 2002 earnings. We think we'll be rewarded for those decisions.
All right, let me ask you about some specifics in the funds that you oversee with your team. The Nation's Strategic Growth Fund is off 9% year-to-date. Nation's Capital is off 12% year-to-date. So one is beating the S&P, one is not. They're holding very similar issues like GE and IBM and Microsoft and Pfizer, and you know the list much better than I.
Sure.
What is the problem with this list of broad-shouldered, large-cap stocks at the moment?
Well, I don't think there's particularly a problem. You have to realize that in the late 90s, those large cap growth stocks had tremendous positive returns. They were very much in favor. Their growth rates were high. People wanted to own them. Over the last year and a half, those growth rates have decelerated, and a lot of investor capital has flowed into other asset classes like small cap and mid cap and fixed income and international. So currently, those stocks are out of favor, but we think it'll be soon when they come back into favor, and we'll be rewarded for owning them.
Okay. Are your investors looking for a lot of reassurance at this point because of the situation you described?
Oh, certainly. We spend a lot of time talking to our clients and explaining to them what's going on and talking about diversification, not only across S&P 500 sectors, but across asset classes, because over time, the best way to reach an investment goal is to be properly diversified by asset class. And so in a period like this, you want to make sure you have smatterings of other different asset classes to offset the weakness in large cap growth stocks.
Let me ask you a few specifics about the stocks we talked about a moment ago. GE, for instance, is off 13% year-to-date, 22% over 12 months. They're losing Jack Welch. You say that GE will see significant amounts of funds flow into it shortly. What's going to attract that money?
GE is one of the most widely held stocks among mutual funds and among individual investors. When funds really start flowing back into the market, GE is going to see its share of those fund flows. Furthermore, it's trading at a very attractive valuation right now. It's been beaten down based on some concerns about its power business. And consider that GE, by virtue of its diversification, is a good proxy for their overall economy. And as the economy picks up, we think GE will do well as well.
Would you advise somebody who's owned it for a year and so is losing money on it to buy more now and dollar average?
Actually, I would want to see that person's entire portfolio, but if I couldn't, I definitely think GE is a name that you want to own. And that dollar cost averaging at this point makes a lot of sense.
Okay. One quick question on Viacom. You like this stock? It's got a PE at 278. What in the world justifies that?
Well, you don't look at the broadcasting and media stocks really trade more on their cash flow multiples, and Viacom's cash flow multiple actually today is very attractive relative to its peers, and we think Viacom will do very well once ad spending picks back up. As you know, Viacom owns a CBS network, it owns MTV, It owns VH1, Nickelodeon. Those are must-own properties for advertisers, and Viacom will do well in that environment.
David, got to leave it there. Thanks for your thoughts today.
You bet.
David Spica, Senior Portfolio Manager, Bank of America Capital Management. And after a quick break, spin-offs such as power producer Myrant and high-end leather maker Coach have been successful. Should you be looking at spin-offs? We'll take a look with you.
To the Meadowlands, please.
Look who it is. It's a Chris Berman. Chris Berman of the moon. Chris Berman! Overboard! No, that was not good. This next will be brilliant. Rumbling, bumbling, stumbling.
Want to get away?
Tumbling.
Now you can with Southwest Airlines' $39 to $99 sale when you purchase by August 23rd.
You are now free to move about the country.
Do you sometimes feel you're playing a game when you pick stocks? There's a better way. E-Signal market scanners take the guesswork out of selecting stocks. In just seconds, you can screen the entire market to reveal the best trading prospects in real time. You can also customize the scanner to search for just the sectors and price ranges that interest you. If you're serious about making money in today's fast-moving markets, you need E-Signal market scanners. For a free demo, call 1-800-322-6960. Call today and stop playing games.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
What's that?
Make sure
It's a
all
Sony.
luggage is
I didn't know
secured
Sony
this
made
time.
computers. Yeah, it's a Vio.
Please
Would you mind if
fasten your
I...
seatbelts and turn off all electronic devices.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sleek, slim, and sophisticated, the Vio SR series with Intel Pentium 3 processors are designed with the power for both work and play.
Sir, could you turn off? Nice computer.
The Vio SR33 with the Intel Celeron processor and external CD drive. Style and power starting at just $9.99.
Real light and thin? Yeah, that's why I got it.
Sir?
Yo, technology boy.
Sir, will you please?
It's a really nice computer.
You will not be able to take off.
What's going on here?
Thanks.
Sir, put the computer away. Sorry.
Buy direct and get a free wireless modem and 1 month free service from Go America with a 12-month service agreement. Call 1-877-490-VIO for your Sony SR series with Intel Pentium 3 processor. Sony Vio SR series.
Well, investors have profited this year from buying spin-offs of large corporations. About 20 spin-offs have come to market so far this year, and some 20 more are on the calendar through December. Which ones are the best bet for investors? Well, Greg Miles has Wall Street's spin on all these spin-off shoots.
Savvy investors are making fat profits this year by buying the stocks of spin-offs, the cast-off subsidiaries of U.S. companies. Energy provider Myrant has risen 9%, media researcher Arbitron 13%, and leather marketer Coach has risen 75% since they were spun off this spring.
Over the long haul, my experience.
This has been a test of the emergency alert system.
Tracking stock is undervalued and will rise from $16 in recent days to $20 in 6 months to as high as $25 a share in 18 months as an independent company.
Eventually, the S&P 500 will add it to the index, which will stimulate some buying pressure for that.
Robert Topping looks at other signs before buying.
So you'd like to see decent balance sheet, strong management or seasoned management, insider buying by management.
Topping's considering buying stock in Microlis, a chip equipment company, to be spun out on Thursday. He believes Microlis has 50% upside and only 25% downside. Despite falling profits, other investors are enthusiastic about Microlis' strong technology and cash flow and believe the chip downturn is bottomed. Another big spin-off play is diversified rail giant Canadian Pacific, set for October. The company will do 5 separate spin-offs of its railway, shipbuilding, coal, hotel resorts, and oil businesses. All of these units have solid cash flow or profits, but the highly profitable Star Oil business is expected to be the best market performer. Some investors are getting in early by buying shares of Canadian Pacific, the parent. The parent sells now for around $38 a share, and some analysts estimate the 5 separate companies will be worth around $50 a share in 6 months. The spin-off fund owns stock in both Canadian Pacific and Liberty Media. But buying shares in these companies requires a strong stomach and also lots of patience. In many cases, these new stocks drift downward for several months before rising again, if at all. Greg Miles, Bloomberg News.
Well, the future of Hughes Electronics continues to draw a certain amount of attention. Parent General Motors says it is seriously examining the bid for its satellite broadcast unit made by EchoStar Communications. EchoStar surprised many analysts this week with its $30 billion offer for Hughes. That's because many observers thought GM would sell the Hughes unit to Rupert Murdoch's News Corp and that the deal was done. Well, Bloomberg News reporter Adam Steinhauer joins us now with more from our San Francisco bureau. And Adam, good to see you. Where are we with this? I mean, does the fact that EchoStar is making an offer force News Corp to pay some more for it?
Very possibly, although it's uncertain more than what, because News Corp has never publicly said what its offer is. This looks like it's going to make it difficult for News Corp either way, though, just because it forces them to be more accountable to GM Hughes shareholders and to have an offer that looks like it can be justified as more valuable than the one EchoStar has made.
Is it obvious to people who are following the story which combination would be easiest to sell to regulators?
Most people we've been speaking to think that certainly the News Corp combination with Hughes would be easier to get by regulators. EchoStar buying Hughes, that would combine the #1 and 2 satellite broadcasters in the country. And EchoStar has been sensitive to this, and they've been speaking about nationwide pricing and the cost cuts to consumers they think they can achieve by the cost savings they'll get by combining.
Just quickly, Adam, we know that News Corp may have a deep bench of investors. Folks like Microsoft and Liberty may come in with them. Would EchoStar be going it alone as far as you know?
No, they have some backing, they believe, by some of the telecom companies, although it's unlikely most people we're speaking to think that they'd be able to raise the kind of money that News Corp can.
All right, got to leave it there, Adam. Thanks very much for getting us up to speed. Adam Steinhauer is following that story for us in the San Francisco bureau. Well, coming up next on Bloomberg Market Line, cancer claims the life of Maureen Reagan. Mark Crumpton has details on that and all the world and national news headlines on News Brief next.
Seize the power. Feel the speed. Introducing the most powerful trading system available, DTN IQ 2.0. The new DTN IQ explodes with the fastest streaming market data direct from the exchanges. And it's loaded with all the features that active traders need to capitalize on today's high-volume markets. There's even direct access trading right from your DTN IQ screens through our brokerage partners. Plus, DTN IQ 2.0 costs less than any comparable service. So call now or visit our website for a free trial, and we'll include DTN IQ's new custom scans that uses your trading strategies to analyze the market in real time, tick by tick. Experience the unmatched speed and power to trade the market like never before. DTN IQ 2.0, the fastest way to the action.
Independent investors across the nation are making this switch and now pay a flat rate online stock commission of only $5. It's RJT.com, where you can trade online. And with our Rapid Jet Trade and DCN access, you choose where your trade is made. Choices, that's what it's all about. So if you want speed, reliability, and ECN access from your desktop with HTML or application-based screens, you need RJT.com. ECN trades are just $5 plus a penny a share. And with our RJT Jetstream, there's free streaming quotes, real time, tick by tick, real-time charting too. All for one flat rate online commission of just $5 per stock trade, including limited stop orders. RJT.com is pure cutting-edge technology. Do the math. Make the trade. Call or log on today. Go direct to RJT.com.
I'm Bloomberg meteorologist Mike Leone with a look at the weather around the world. Scattered showers and thunderstorms will continue to be a problem over much of southeastern Asia as well as Malaysia, while here in the United States, the heat and humidity will be the main concern again for most of the eastern half of the country, while thunderstorms begin to develop across the northern plains with a chance for severe weather, and we can expect thunderstorm development over the Gulf Coast. In South America for the rest of the day today, expect partial sunshine across Colombia, Venezuela, and northern Peru, and we may see some afternoon thunderstorms across the coast of Brazil, otherwise partly sunny with highs in the upper 70s to lower 80s. For Europe tomorrow, expect to see scattered showers over the British Isles, otherwise a mixture of clouds and sun with plenty of sunshine across the rest of Western Europe. We have a chance for afternoon showers and thunderstorms along the Mediterranean coast with high temperatures in the upper 80s. And finally, a look across Asia. Temperatures in Tokyo hit 87 under partly sunny skies with a threat for showers, and we'll see afternoon thunderstorms in Manila with a temperature of 87.
It is time now for a check of today's top world and national news stories, and for that we turn to Mark Crumpton. Mark?
Kathleen, thank you. Maureen Reagan has lost her 5-year battle with skin cancer. The daughter of former President Ronald Reagan and his first wife, actress Jane Wyman, died today in her home outside of Sacramento. She was 60. A public memorial service will be held next week. Nancy Reagan says she'll miss her stepdaughter very much. She says Maureen had, quoting here, a unique